All right, change of plans right off the top. It is Wednesday, 1:30 in the afternoon Eastern time. Draft is about 1 week away, and you can tell by the title. We are doing the best defensive prospects for the Patriots in this year's draft. And when you have the type of conversation like I had with Dan Pizzuta, national NFL writer, who's on, I don't know, a couple months ago, one of the best conversations we've had on this show, breaking down prospects down to the smallest possible level, I don't want to wait any longer. So, for all the folks who asked mailbag questions on Monday via X or Blue Sky, or we had one via email, Joe, I promise I'm going to get to you. I'm going to get to those later this week because we are going to get to Dan, almost an hour-long conversation with him. We had a great 12 minutes with a new MailFan, John, who came prepared with not only a big board, but a rundown for me. And look, when you donate $10 to my campaign, my part of the campaign with Doug Kide for Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, you donate there, you email me, shoot me a DM, whatever. You can do the same. 5-10 minutes in the MailFan segment. We'll talk about whatever you want. That's all it takes. Come with a question or a topic, $10+ donation to LLS. Make it happen. I'll give you the link if you need it. John did that. John came on. He was great. So we're going to skip the mailbag, which was going to be the start here. We're going to kick that to later this week. In the meantime, tons of great draft talk. And as you know, you're listening or watching the Pats Interference podcast brought to you by the wonderful CLNS Media Network. And I will encourage you, because we only have about 24 hours left. If you are local, I'm talking in and around Boston, South Shore, or even North Shore and want to take a drive, the draft party is tomorrow night, Thursday, the 17th, at Vitamin C SEA Brewery. Pop Douglas, yes, your New England Patriots wide receiver, Pop Douglas, is going to come. He's going to have a Q&A for at least a half hour down there, starting at 7:30. So if you want tickets to talk to Pop, ask him questions, ask me a question, Doug, Mike Giardi, Mark Daniels, Fitzy, we're all going to be there. That event, all the money we raise there, which includes 2 tickets to any Patriots game you want, which will be auctioned off live at around 8:15 or 8:30, come on down. You buy tickets at eventbrite.com, search the draft party, DRAUGHT. Again, all the money goes to Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. You can win 2 tickets if you win the auction tomorrow night, Thursday, at Vitamin C SEA Brewery, to any game against any opponent. You will sit in a suite with unlimited food and drink, but only if you come and buy a ticket to the draft party. Again, Thursday, 7:30 p.m., Vitamin C Brewery in Weymouth, Massachusetts. If you still need more help, just email me, acallahan@bostonherald.com, or shoot me a DM on Twitter or Blue Sky, and I will get back to you. This is going to be an awesome event. We're almost sold out. I want you to go get the tickets, bid in items, Red Sox tickets, Mike Vrabel sign football, talk to Pop Douglas, clown me, whatever you want. Just show up tomorrow at the draft party, and those are all the details. So, wasting no more time, it's time to hear from Dan Pizzuta, MailFan John, all about the draft, who the Patriots should pick on defense, and why. All right, as promised, national NFL writer Dan Pizzuta is back with us, second time on the Pats Interference podcast. One of the quickest returnees. He was not paid. He was not coaxed. He did this on his own volition, which is maybe a first here in the pod. But I appreciate you coming back, man.
Yeah, happy to be here, and happy to have the quick return. It was very exciting to get the invite back so quickly.
Yeah, I don't know how exciting this is. I don't know what that says about the rest of your life, but as teased before, we are talking some defensive prospects today, and I like to wait later in the process as usual. So when I tell you I like a guy, I love a guy, or this guy's a fit, like that's it. You know, we might change our minds on mock drafts. I don't know how many mocks you've done this year and past years, but like I'm going to commit to my draft takes. Is that something you like to do, or do you find yourself waffling as you kind of study more guys and go back and forth?
Yeah, I think the place that I've been able to stay for most of my career is a guy who doesn't have to do a lot of mocks or really rank anybody. So I can just kind of come in with, these are guys I like, guys I can kind of talk about a little bit. And then I don't really have to be too held into this guy is definitely better than this one. I find that is the fun lane to be in draft season. I think that's luckily the place I've been able to find myself in.
I like it. Good for you. All right, well, let's get to it, because last week, as I said before, I did 12 offensive prospects. You've done a lot of works in other pods and hits and writing about guys who fit, even from a fantasy perspective. So first, I'd encourage everyone to go read what Dan has said about those running backs and receivers and tight ends. Today, we're doing defense. And what I want to do is we'll go back and forth with players that we like. This will add up to 12 total prospects, just like we have for the offensive guys. But in the Dan Pizzuta spirit, we will go in the I like this guy the most type of order. This doesn't have to be positionally. We did largely ignore linebackers, because, again, this is going to be geared towards the Patriots. But when you look at this defensive class, it's deep at edge, deep at D tackle. It's solid for the corners in the middle rounds. And then it's kind of eye of the beholder. So who is the apple of your eye as we kind of get into the best fits for the Patriots in this class on defense?
There are a couple of guys here. While we get to like who I really enjoyed the most, I'm going to go with Ty Robinson, interior defensive lineman from Nebraska.
On my list. Okay, good.
Is he?
Yeah, immediate overlap. This is excellent. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, fantastic. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think Dane Brugler's latest mock, he went 77th to New England, but he was on my list before I even saw that. He's a guy who's a very explosive 9.89 relative athletic score. He's 6'5". He's only 288 pounds, but you just look at him and he just looks like a tank. And I think he plays that way too. He played all over Nebraska. They have like an actual 3 down front, playing like a 3-3-5 that we see a lot more in college. But he had sacks when he was lined up at nose, like straight up over guards, inside the tackles. Had a bunch of production as a pass rusher all over there. I think he's strong enough against the run. That's not going to be his biggest piece, but I think that he definitely has that as part of his game. 42 pressures last year, 7 sacks, 4 passes defense. So he's the kind of guy who has a lot of that ability to understand where the pass is going, even if he's not getting there. A lot of plays where he's just kind of getting his arms up. I think just kind of an overall. And if you like a Mike Vrabel type of guy, 6 snaps at fullback in short yardage situations and near the goal line where he was a lead blocker and just like running over guys. So I think he was a lot of fun, and I think would be a nice kind of mid-round type of guy to fit on that interior defensive line.
Yeah, his projection is interesting because, and I like his tape, and you hit on a lot of the reasons why, even at 6'5", 288, there is an element of, okay, there's just a one gap, quick penetration and go immediately. And he's got a really, really hot motor, but also you can put him at 5 technique and trust that he'll play heads up on the tackle and do some of the dirty or a little bit more boring work. But for him, he was a 5-year starter. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years in college starting. So he's an older prospect. If there are teams that love him like the Patriots might from a play demeanor, character, versatility standpoint, maybe he goes third. And if other teams look at that and be like, why would you hang around at Nebraska of all places for 5 years, not transfer, still play, and you're productive and that's great, but we'll wait. You're a little bit older, a little more tread on the tire. So it could be as early. What'd you say? Dane Brugler had him at 77?
Yeah.
Yeah, so 77 or maybe gets to be early day 3, which if you're the Patriots, you're like, okay, fine. Like we got multiple thirds, 4th round pick, couple in the 5th. And the things that I would add to that, in addition to what we've already covered, is I think he could be a rotational player right away. Where some teams, as I just described with the age, look at that as a knock. The Patriots who need impact players right away, and whose 3rd defensive tackle is Khyiris Tonga, which all due respect to Khyiris Tonga, who's much larger than me, it could throw me out any window of his choosing. Like, that's not an ideal rotation for a really good defense. Ty Robinson, because of the versatility, because of his development, his experience, and that motor, I think is just a tailor-made fit for this defense and just a Mike Vrabel team in addition.
Yeah, I think so too. And he's very fun to watch. I think he does have that kind of smaller frame, 288. It kind of sounds like it is going to be small for an interior defensive lineman. But he uses it well. It's a stout, like 288. So he plays much bigger than that. Like you said, you can move him all around that defensive line. I think that type of versatility would definitely help. And I think he's someone who could definitely fit in right away, especially on a New England defensive line.
Yeah, and that's the case too, where guys like Ty Robinson, and we'll get to a couple other names here too at D tackle, the case for waiting, if, let's say Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter are gone, which has been this big overarching question hanging over all 6 states in New England. What do the Patriots do? Mason Graham has sometimes been an answer. He was my answer in my last mock because he's just the highest consensus player left after those two. But you also go, okay, he's the best consensus player in a really deep defensive line class. Why not find value here in a guy that we know we can plug and play, but we don't need to start because Christian Barmore, if healthy, is going to start. Milton Williams, if healthy, is going to start. We need a rotation guy. Ty Robinson is really there. And then, like you mentioned, with the with just how fun he is to watch and play in that penetration or kind of anchoring well, especially for a guy who's 6'5". Did you watch any of the fullback snaps, by the way? Because I could not find them.
I did, yes. Yeah.
What'd you see?
He's just running over dudes. It's awesome. If he gets like out to the edge and there's a safety or a corner, he was just kind of throwing them over. It wasn't always like the most impactful guy making the hole, but on a couple of them, he was, especially just near the goal line. So he was just, creating havoc around there. And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. All right. That is a look. If they do draft him, which again could be, I trust Dan Pizzuta over myself. But in this respect, we agree, and you agree, obviously. If he goes at 77, that is a training camp goal line must see moment come August when we're all in the dog days. And the Patriots historically, Gerard Mayo, Bill Belichick, I presume Mike Vrabel will be like, F it, give me defense on offense. Either they flip the whole 11 on 11s for a goal line period, or they just take him, last year's Delani Tavai, at fullback, and I want to see Ty Robinson there. And I will tell you when there are padded practices, so hopefully you at home can come down to Foxborough and see that happen too. All right, more the top of my list, players that I love the most where the Patriots fit. I mentioned him last week with Mike Giardi. This is Barryn Sorrell, the edge out of Texas. And he's a projected another kind of like late day 2, maybe early day 3 pick. 6'3", 256, 6 sacks, 44 tackles last year at Texas. We're in a 4'6", physical freak. And this is not, freak in terms of, oh my God, he's big and strong. This is Bruce Feldman of The Athletic. Annual article, one of the best in all of football writing, does the freaks based on athletic testing. This man squatted 575 pounds. He bench presses 425 pounds. And as I mentioned, runs a 4'6". This is a Mike Vrabel player who is hard-nosed, relentless. He was the top defensive lineman at the Senior Bowl, according to players on the other team. So the national team voting for his American squad. I just look at this and knew we could talk about the academic All-American, which is like the earlier you bring that up, the less I'm confident the player can play. Barryn Sorrell can play, and he fits from a physical prototype standpoint. He does miss some tackles. He doesn't have a deep repertoire of pass rush moves. And sometimes, playing 100 miles an hour as he does, even in the Georgia game, second Georgia game in the SEC championship, like he'll just fly by. I think the Patriots look at that and go, we can harness that. We can steer that in the right direction and know that just like Ty Robinson, if we put him in the rotation right now, he can make an impact because he checks all of the boxes, including the biggest one I haven't mentioned yet, which is just the play demeanor. This is a violent dude.
Yeah. And he's one of those guys that has that violent play style and has the kind of a bit of athleticism to back it up. The athleticism was a little all over the place, but the 4.68 or 4.88 the 40, and that's something where you can see that kind of explosion. And then the way he kind of does play violently is going to be the fun off the edge. And I think that's a way, 49 pressures last year is able to convert that, pretty well. So I think the way he is able to just kind of win off the line early is definitely a place where it's going to be a little bit more, developmental. But I think that's definitely something where that fits into what New England needs. And I think going in that type of sweet spot, betting on some of the athleticism and some of the traits, projecting a little more, that's the type of guy that I think is going to be could be an impactful edge there, especially when, that I think that quickness off the line is one of the things I like the most from him. And I think that translates really well to adding a little more to what he can bring in the pass rush.
Yeah, and let's be clear, when we talk about guys we love on day 2 and day 3, just like even the guys at the top of the draft, they're not perfect prospects, right? Like we're going to stand for them and we're going to tell you all the good things and let you find out the bad. But in this case, I'll just tell you right now, like he would drop into space sometimes at Texas. And then if you're just watching defense for the first time, or an alien, as everyone says, came to planet Earth and you said, who's a little bit out of place here doing their job, you could point to Barryn Sorrell and be like, that man just should be in a 3-point stance and moving forward as opposed to backwards. I think that's correctable. I also think, there are elements of where the Patriots did that historically. You wanted edge guys who could drop and, sim pressures or true zone blitzes. We'll see what Vrabel does. He might look and be like, we just don't have the guys to do that kind of stuff right away. And he wouldn't fit that. But, I mean, the things that he does do well, team captain for 8 games at Texas, like I just think high character, violence, the physical prototype there, it just makes too much sense not to happen unless you have a team that, falls in love more with them, or they take another edge higher than 69 or 77 overall, which is probably where he would go, if not a little bit later. And then you go, okay, we've taken our edge guy and we'll move on, because at that point you have Harold Landry and Keon White and Anthony Jennings and some other developmental guys.
Yeah, I think so. That's probably, the right way to put it. I kind of have a similar guy if we just want to kind of jump ahead to so Ashton Gillotte from
Mhm.
Louisville. Just to get a sense, he went, I think, 91st in Brugler's, so kind of back part of the top 100. 6'2", 264, 975 relative athletic score. It's funny, his top RAS comp was Harold Landry, which
Mm.
probably not something I would want to, have a game built off of, but I think they are kind of different players. He has experience both stand up and 3-point stance. He was, 63% of the time in a 3-point stance this past year. In 2023, it was 89%. So they kind of changed what they were doing in Louisville a little bit over the past couple of years. He had more hits and pressures in 2024, but fewer sacks. But I think that was a lot of because Louisville just didn't have really a second guy to take pressure off of him. He had a higher pressure share in 2024 than he did in 2023. So he was doing a lot of stuff. He's got really, he's explosive, has good hands, can use both speed and power, which is interesting because he only has a 5th percentile arm length, 23rd percentile wingspan, but I think he uses his arms really well when he's rushing the passer. He had a bunch of moves where, he's using a good long arm as he's getting around the edge. He's not a dominant run defender, but it's often in the right spot. So he's just, one of these guys that I think kind of when you have that athleticism, and it's interesting because there's a lot of guys in this class where you're really trying to bet on the athleticism a little bit because there's not a lot of guys who have production and athleticism in this edge class. So you're kind of projecting one or the other to really hit. So I think projecting on the athleticism, especially with someone like this, who's going to go, later, in the back end of the 3rd round, really, where he could potentially be going. It definitely has a lot of skill where I think it can translate and definitely develop and use him as a, designated pass rusher a little bit to work him into the lineup. And I think that could be a fun fit to where he is in New England.
Yeah, a lot of great points there, and especially the overarching one about the edge class. Like you're going to have the group of guys who were super productive, and you go, "There's something missing here in the athletic profile," or you go with the freaks who go, "We just need to harness this. We need to give them time or figure out where things went wrong on the tape, or just maybe there were opportunities that were just taken by other players, or they're down the depth chart, whatever it might be." And it's funny you bring that up because when we talked to Mike Vrabel yesterday here in Foxborough, he made a remark about in 2015, so this would have been his first year of the Texans as an assistant. Daniil Hunter was coming out of LSU, and this guy Hunter at the time did not have a lot of production, but tested height, weight, speed, all those different things. And so he goes and obviously has a career, still playing, at an unbelievable level, and that kind of stuck in the back of his mind. And I said, well, if that's in the back of Mike Vrabel's mind, I need to keep that in the back of my mind. And so this pick here too, especially as a guy who you don't need to trust him right away as an early down run defender. Like we talk about rotations, and this is something that's going to be much a bigger deal for the Patriots, who had multiple defensive linemen last year playing 60% or more of defensive snaps and just got worn down. Harold Landry's a good run defender on the edge. Anthony Jennings might be the best in football for spurts. So you can bring in day 2, day 3 guys and be like, hey, we're going to teach you what you need to know. And you're not going to see the field full time until you get, firmer hands, heavier hands, and set that edge. But in the meantime, go nuts on 3rd downs. I like this pick a lot.
Yeah, and he's just a fun guy. He's still developing a little bit, and the quick twitch really just kind of shows up. He's fast around the edge. A couple of plays, he was just super fast on stunts. If they ran a stunt, he was inside before the offensive line can really figure it out. So that's the type of thing where if you are going in this late 3rd type of player, those are the type of traits that I think you can definitely bet on. He was a fun player to watch, and I think would be a fun developmental piece. Who could have that type of impact early as you kind of build him up to be a more well-rounded player, throughout his career.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to introduce my next player by asking a question. Jalon Walker, do you see him? And I know this is scheme dependent, right? Off ball or full-time edge if you had to pick?
Yeah, I think I would probably do more full-time edge because I think that's just where he'll fit just a little better. And I think he plays a little better downhill. You don't want him quite as much doing some of the coverage things. But I think, when you're playing the type of, the type of a defense that we think like New England's going to play with some of the, three-man fronts, but two guys on the edge, kind of the five-man front, you do have that ability to drop him back a little bit. So I think that is where I would, play him more. And I think that's probably where he has a little more of an impact. Yeah, I think that's probably, I think that would be a fun fit with the way New England plays. Have him mostly on the edge, but then be able to kind of drop back as part of his game, not the whole thing.
Yes. Okay, good. I'm glad you said that, because if we disagree, this part would be very quick. But like Jalon Walker is, up there with a lot of guys who, and again, the scheme fit is a big question for teams picking in the top 5, top 8. But consensus is just like, this guy can play. Okay. So then if the question is, where is he best suited? I think it's a good thing that you have multiple answers, right, for Jalon Walker. And so he's 6'1", 243. I'm knocked that he's a bit light for the prototype on the edge. Historically, for Mike Vrabel defenses, you could argue you can gain a little bit of weight. And again, the guy just plays. Like Vrabel talk yesterday talks about, what's most important when you're kind of breaking down certain prospects. He said production. Well, the production's here. You go, oh, it's only 6 sacks. Like everyone eats in that Georgia defense. And the way that they shifted his snaps to play more off ball last year, like naturally that's going to decline some of the pressure rate and the opportunities for sacks. And when you look at him off ball, I think that's fine. But it clearly was a better fit on the edge. Like just a simple eye test would tell you that. I think some of the numbers and grades would tell you that as well. So even if he's a little bit undersized, this is a player who, you can move around the defensive front, was revered at Georgia for all leadership stuff, showed up in their biggest games, and I think is a fine plan B if Abdul Carter's gone and Travis Hunter's gone, maybe at 4, or if the Patriots do trade back and get a little bit lucky. Like he's just a fit. I think this is a great football player, and I don't know what it is with some guys like him, because this goes for Abdul Carter, it goes for Micah Parsons. Georgia and Penn State get these elite edge rushers, and like, yeah, why don't you take a couple steps back, be on 2 feet, play off ball. Like they're good at that. Just let them go full time at what they're best at. And I think that's what the Patriots would do here with Walker. Maybe undersized be damned, because some people even don't think there's a big gap between him and Carter. I don't know where you stand on that. To me, I think there is, but he's still good enough to be worthy of a top 4-5 pick. And I've really come around on him more in the last few weeks.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to frame it, where I think he probably should be, up there in, the top of that second tier of edge rusher. I do think Carter is, like kind of in a tier of his own there at that position. But like you said, I think it's because, off-ball linebacker is a little more valuable in the college game, just because of how the college offenses kind of are, especially with a lot of these, RPOs and things like that, where you're kind of slowing down some of the straight edge rushers. But when you look at what he was able to do when he was rushing the passer, and he did it on 50% of his pass snaps, he was able to get in there. And even when whether it was from depth or along the line, he is a guy who can do that. And I think that is a more translatable skill. I think you kind of saw with, like you said, the Abdul Carters and the Parsons. Like it's crazy that Dallas also drafted Parsons as a linebacker and would not have been the best edge rusher in the league unless they had like multiple injuries there during his rookie season. They were like, oh, we should just make him a full-time edge rusher. So there is a lot of skill to that point that I think does translate a little more. So if, I haven't really thought about it, but if New England wants to do that at 4, I wouldn't hate it, because again, it would help even if you want to make him a little bit more of a hybrid. I think they still could use some potential help at linebacker, and I don't think they're going to really attack that position, with a priority. But if you wanted to do that and mix him up a little bit, I think that would be a very fun fit.
Yeah, and I think too, again, there's no grade A option at 4. Again, if the 2 best players in the draft are gone by the time it's your turn to pick, and you're sifting through some decent to good options, a guy who unlocks a whole lot of your playbook, not only just because he can play on the edge and play off ball, but you can get almost positionless on 3rd down. And it comes from a pro scheme at Georgia. That unlocks your ability to pressure with 4 in so many different ways, as opposed to, okay, Keon White's got a hand on the ground. So does Harold Landry. Milton Williams is there, and Christian Barmore. You know who's coming. And at some point, it doesn't matter if they're good enough. But if you're running to a good offensive line, you need some tricks up your sleeve. Jalon Walker, is good enough to put his hand in the dirt, have everyone look and go, oh, okay, he's coming, and still beat you. But if you're able to involve some more sim pressure stuff and trust him to do multiple things, as he did, again, in a pro level scheme at the best conference in college football, why not there? It is a little bit of a leap of faith, but I think it's one that, like, just the more that I watched him, and I was wrong to dismiss early on that he might be a fit here because of the size and that they would be better players overall. And I soured on Will Campbell, and he's come up. Like, I'm in on Jalon Walker. He's been one of the most fun watches here, and a defense loaded with dudes, but he stands out.
Yeah, and that was the third down point is what something I was going to bring up when you did too, is, Dallas does that a lot with Parsons too. When everyone is healthy, can move him off the ball on third down. He's still probably going to rush the passer, but then you don't really know who else is coming. And that's when you have a guy like that who can play all of those successfully. I think that really opens up what you can do in defense. So yeah, I hadn't considered it till this point, but I think you're talking me into how fun of a fit that could potentially be.
Okay, let's rewind then 7 minutes or whenever we started the Jalon Walker conversation. If I'd asked past Dan Pizzuta, what would you do as the Patriots? And this is separate from our current conversation. We're hitting pause. Travis Hunter's gone. Abdul Carter's gone. What would your answer be at 4?
Yeah, I think I had talked myself into Campbell being fine, just because I think you do need help at tackle, and just based on where everything else falls, I would have been fine with that. And then you kind of, I think, can go, wide receiver later, which I think you probably still need a little help with, although Diggs certainly helps there. I had talked myself into being fine with Campbell, even though it wouldn't have been the most exciting pick, but based on their needs and where the draft board fell, I think that would be fine too.
And it sounds like you agree with, I think, the more common sentiment, which doesn't mean that it's right. Like, we're at the point of the draft season where if you don't agree with consensus, everyone's like, oh my God, you don't know ball. I'm like, well, you know how often everyone's wrong about this? Front office, media, fans, like anyone watching, just give it 4 months and we'll watch some guys pop in the preseason we didn't expect. But the consensus being that after the top 2 guys that we've mentioned now 5 times, Carter and Hunter, there is a drop off, and the next tier consists of maybe 8 to 9 guys. So when we go, the pick is fine. It's not the Patriots' fault. I mean, it is that they won their last game and they're picking 4th. But the point is, it's fine because there are 8 guys that you could have. You'd be happy with all of them, which means if you're picking at 9, you'd still be happy.
Yeah, that's certainly something too, where I think they could entertain a trade back too. I think they were certainly in an interesting spot when we thought that Shedeur might be going 2 or 3, but I think now that is much less likely. I think that it does hurt them at 4 a little bit, but does help if they do want to do a trade back. Somebody wants to come up and I don't know, jump somebody for jump for Genty or something. I think, the Patriots can be in a position where now a trade back does certainly make sense, where I don't think they're going to be losing out on the quality of player. You add a couple more picks, and I think you'd be happy with, if you're sitting in, 15 to 18, or even, if you're sitting back in the 20s, that would be a very big trade up, which you'd probably be getting a haul. So you're probably not going back that far, because I don't think anyone's trading up that far. But
Right.
If New England does want to, trade back a couple spots, I think that is a much better option for them now than it was if, a Carter or a Hunter was going to be there, which we thought would potentially be the case, about a month ago.
I got to tell you, it was a sweet, sweet 48 hours here in New England, Dan, far away from you, when the news came out that Abdul Carter is visiting New England. Oh, that's unusual. He should be going top 3. And the Giants are going to hang out with Shedeur Sanders again in a full private workout. It has since come out that private workout with Shedeur Sanders not only does not guarantee anything on its own, but it's part of a larger plan to also meet with Jalen Milroe and some other quarterbacks that are in the draft. So I maintained and said as much in the intro to this podcast that I think Abdul Carter's in play, but only if the Giants put them there for the Patriots, who are crossing their fingers surely, and I think are probably not all that concerned with the character stuff that has come up and I think been fair to a degree in the draft process, but also in the same way that Michael Parsons' character concerns were there 5 years ago. And if you can smooth out some of those hard edges, you have a hell of a football player. So I don't think it's likely, but that's got to be their number one player, I think, right now, realistically, even if realistically means a 5-10% pick, whatever number percent chance. All right, your turn. Player you most like watching a defense who may and ideally, hopefully, fits in New England.
There's a guy who I liked watching more, and there's one that I am more interested to talk about, but we'll go with the guy who I like the most, and that is Darien Porter. Cornerback from Iowa State. I went 98th in Dane Brugler's latest mock draft. All right, so he's 6'3", 195 pounds. 9.99 relative athletic score, which is pretty much as good as it gets. Ran a 4.340 again at 6'3". What's interesting about him is he's a 6-year player at Iowa State, but he came to school as a wide receiver, played mostly special teams, didn't have a lot of snaps on offense, and didn't move to corner until 2022. Because he's a 6-year starter or 6-year player, he's already 24 years old. So he's a bit on the older side. So he does lack some experience at corner. He only SIS only charted him with 217 coverage snaps this past year. That was with a missed game from injury. But when he was on the field, he's really good. SIS also charted him with 15 targets, which I've also seen as a negative, that he doesn't have a lot of experience getting the ball thrown at him. But the whole point of being a corner is not having the ball thrown at you. So I would say he did pretty well in that area. His 7% target rate was the best in this class. And so it was his 27% completion percentage allowed. More combined pass breakups this past year, 6, than completions allowed, 4. So he is
wow.
Yes, he is a tall outside corner. You don't want to give the Tariq Woolen comp, but that is the type of guy where it's a very raw athlete at corner. Oh, he was huge, super athletic. I think he just does a lot well, and he's still, I think, learning the position. There was a play against UCF where he's playing up against press. They have a stack, and the guy he's originally pressing starts to run inside. Then he comes off to go back to the outside receiver and is able to locate the ball down the field on a go route and break it up. So he has that, ball awareness too, because he's been a wide receiver. So this is a guy, if he's going in the back part of the third round, I know the Patriots don't necessarily need a outside receiver right now with Christian Gonzalez and
Carlton Davis,
Carlton Davis, who I was blanked on the name, but but I think this is a guy who can work in on the outside, and he's a great special teamer because he played so much there. He had 1 punt blocked in each of the past 4 seasons, and he blocked a field goal in 2024. So he's a guy who I think can be an impact player on special teams. He's a guy where you're just definitely betting on his size and athleticism at corner, and I think he has the best coverage metrics, I think, in this class. So if you are betting on that to continue as he continues to learn the position, because he's only played corner for 3 years and not a lot, I think that is something that I would personally be interested in betting on, especially if it's late in the third round like that.
So there's so much here that I want to unpack, but I have to start in the place that if Bill Belichick was still the head coach of the New England Patriots, this is his type of corner. That they mandated ball skills was, if not number 1, number 2 skill, and the other skill would have been how good are you in man-to-man. And when you talk about allowing fewer catches than you had interceptions or pass breakups, boom, there it is. And the danger, of course, is not in that he didn't allow a ton of passes thrown in his direction. It's just that what does that sample tell you? And if it's not a whole lot, then there's some more uncertainty there, which I think if you're the Patriots today at Mike Vrabel, you're probably willing to do that given the positional needs early 4th round. I didn't include Porter on my recent article, did 8 cornerbacks the Patriots could be targeting, because that went a little bit nickel heavy, and I'm going to go to a nickel here in a second. But I do love the player. And you mentioned Tariq Woolen, who came to mind immediately as you started talking about him, because not only is the frame similar, 6'3", 210 versus 6'4", 200 pounds, but it is that just unbelievable athleticism where you go this is clay that will mold itself, and what comes out the other end should be a really good corner. And it's just the wrong time and place here. But I do love the player. And honestly, look, I wouldn't be shocked if they took him, because, you signed Carlton Davis, big 3-year contract, around $20 million per year. That might be a deal that you want to get out after a year, just because of the volatility of corner play year to year, right? It's more unpredictable, and he's getting a little bit up in age. Well, what are you going to do? Just move on to Alex Austin, who could be a free agent after next season? Maybe not. Maybe you want to take a guy in the 4th round. And I would wholeheartedly support Darien Porter, New England Patriot. It's just the time is tough. Was there other tape for people who might want to watch that you liked of Porter's, or was it just the UCF? Because that's a really good one too for how wide they play with those splits in UCF, just to get you're isolated. What do you do one-on-one or with a stack?
Yeah, there was, I mean, I bounced around a little bit. So luckily the way I have watched games is I just kind of get to cover snaps where I'm not necessarily watching a specific game.
Oh, nice.
Thanks to some of the true media stuff, which I'm not going to have access to for much longer. But so there are just a couple things, and Porter is interesting because he is a guy where you do have to be patient watching him, because you do just have to watch snaps where not a lot is happening because he is playing well in coverage and the ball is not getting thrown at him. I think one of the other reasons, he only had, 3 interceptions is because he wasn't getting thrown at very often. So he didn't have the opportunities to have some of those ball skills. So, or to show them off at a rate where I think some other players might have. So yeah, he's just a guy that I think is a lot of fun. And, like you said, it's not an immediate need for New England, but I think even outside corner is a place where you can never have too many players. There has never been too deep of a rotation at outside corner. And because he comes with such a prolific special teams background, I think that would fit to make that pick a little more, a little more acceptable, where you are going to get value out of him, especially when it comes to just the impact plays, the pump blocks and the field goal block and things like that, where he does show off that athleticism on special teams, which I think it could be certainly helpful, even if he's not, playing starter reps at corner in his rookie year.
And that I'm so glad you mentioned that too, because that was the other bullet point as far as and this doesn't matter now because he's gone, but Belichick would have been all over Darien Porter. There's a non-zero chance Bill is trying to pull him into the portal to have him come to UNC and enroll.
There would have been plays drawn up for him to specifically, block some kicks. Yeah, which would have been a lot of fun, which I wouldn't put it past Vrabel doing either. So no. I think it could still be on the table.
Yeah. All right. I mentioned a nickel. We just talked about Central Florida. How about McWilliams? This is a player who I did not love watching. You talk about a guy I love versus more interesting to talk about. This comes with a little bit of intel. I can tell you from people that I heard after the Senior Bowl, confirmed the combine, and said, I'll just wait, confirm this a little bit longer as we get closer. Now I can tell you the Patriots really like McWilliams. And he's a guy who's projected to go day 3, 4th, 5th, maybe 6th round, 5'10", 191, clocked to 4.41 at the combine, which – after watching his tape, felt a little faster than I expected, but good for McWilliams, who transferred to UCF from UAB, was a team captain his last year at UAB. Only 2 career interceptions. Don't love that. What you do love is that he's relentless. This is a tenacious player, whether he's at nickel, whether he's outside. There's some scheme versatility here. He's painted a lot as a better zone corner. I could see it. He would have to play man in New England, but the physicality and the leadership and a guy who's been around and played in systems, I think is really going to appeal to them. So the fact that he's 5'10", 191 kind of slots him in New England as playing nickel, which is a position that Vrabel highlighted at the combine as being kind of modern football. That's a really important position, not only just playing man and playing zone, but your ability to blitz, sometimes run contained, obviously run force, all these different things. The ball skills are missing there. He gave up a long ball at the Senior Bowl. Played well in the practices, which I think they weighed more heavily, and was good on punt return back in college. So there are a lot of things working for McWilliams, but I had to include them on this list because it's time to tell you the things that we know. I know that the Patriots would like to draft him, whether or not they get the chance or they do so early. We'll find out.
Yeah, and he's a guy that does, play well, I think, regardless of where he lines up. And like you said, 5'10" probably does put him into the slot more, which I think he played about 26% of the time last year. But he bounced around at UCF, where he was, I think, outside in 2022, played slot 2023, played more outside in 2024. So he does have that versatility, which I think does help a lot when you're trying to be a versatile defense, like I think New England is going to play. So the fact that he has all of that, played press about 14% of the time. When he was in man, played really well, under a yard allowed per coverage snap in man last year. Was a little better in zone, but I think that's just because of how, UCF also played. But when you look at kind of his skills and his movement skills, I think that is going to be the type of player who could be a good number 3 and versatile to be in a situation where you can kind of handle some of the lesser receivers or the quicker things. And like you said, with Vrabel, I think it wasn't that long ago where a nickel corner was, has to move inside was a knock on a guy. And that just, that should not be the case anymore. I still hear that sometimes as like a negative for a player, but it's not. Teams are playing 11 personnel on offense at the majority, like 60% of the time is like the league average. So you're playing nickel with all of that. So you have to have that slot corner on the field. So a guy who can go in there, rotate maybe a little bit with some of the other guys they have. I think that would be a solid pick, I think, and is definitely the type of skill. It makes sense that New England likes him because that is the type of skill that I think would fit well in that defense.
Yeah, and look, there are other nickels in this class that I think they could jump at first. Like Jacob Parrish at Kansas State has been projected a whole lot for them, and I think makes sense. And I think it might be a little bit more ready than Mac McWilliams is, but then you don't have the benefit of saying Mac McWilliams on the podcast once or twice a week, which is a lot of fun, at least on my end. All right, I have 2 left. You have 2 left. One of them was which was left? The guy you're most excited to talk about or had more fun watching? Because I'm very intrigued who's left over.
So this is the guy I had the most fun watching, and it fits with kind of the Ty Robinson conversation we were having because it's another interior defensive lineman. But it's JJ Pegues from Ole Miss. He went 137th in
I haven't watched him.
Latest mock, so he's much later. But I think he's a guy who could end up going a little earlier than that because he's fun. So he's 6'3", 309 pounds. He is out of Ole Miss, but he originally went to Auburn as a tight end and then moved to defensive line in 2021. But because of his offensive background, he moves really well at his size. He doesn't play with quite as much strength as you would think for a 309-pound guy, but he's, kind of still learning the position a little bit. But he is also another guy who was able to line up all over the defensive line. He lined up, outside tackles sometimes for Ole Miss last year, and he was able to get around some tackles and pressures. He did it a couple times, like against LSU. Last year, he had 15 havoc plays, which are, sacks, tackle for loss, passes defense, basically anything that is like an impact stat. And that was the third most among the interior defensive linemen. His 3.3% rate was the highest in this class, 15.6% pressure rate on third down. And he is a guy who is also, because of his size, can be good at run defense. His average gain per tackle was under a yard, and that was the best in this class. But what is still knocking him is because he is still, doesn't quite have the, explosive athleticism, even though he does move well for his size. So he's still kind of learning how to, take on some power, especially on double teams and things like that. So where there certainly are flashes, it's still a bit more of a developmental piece. What is really fun about him, and again, fits him with New England, because of his offensive background, he had 21 rushing attempts in 2024 as the Wildcat quarterback. And there's a ton of plays that you can look at. He had 7 rushing touchdowns last year.
Awesome.
And there are a couple plays where he's just straight up the Wildcat quarterback. There are some where, Jackson Dart is kind of in the backfield with him, moves over a little bit, and then Pegues becomes the Wildcat quarterback. 87.5% third down conversion rate. So when they were like third and fourth down,
back at tight end,
he was a Wildcat quarterback, just kind of running up the middle. There was a play, I think it was against Purdue, where they're like midfield 4th and 1, and he leaps over the pile. It's just incredibly fun to watch. So he is a guy who I think can be an impact kind of rotational interior defensive lineman, and that has the could be the short yardage back and a goal line back he was very effective in that type of role. And Lane Kiffin had no problems putting him on offense. I think that could, just it's a fun bonus to his game. But I do like what he does along the defensive line and just basically where the Patriots are right now when he's going to be going later, maybe, 4th round, maybe 5th round. He is the type of guy who I think can grow into a bigger role and fit behind what they already have on the interior defensive line. It doesn't have to be that impact starter to start, but a really fun player who I think should be getting more attention. And I'm a little surprised he hasn't.
So yeah, I had heard of JJ Pegues, but had not taken the time to watch him. I have a doctor's appointment later today, Dan. I don't know if I'm going to go now. I think I need to watch all of this film. I need to look. He's a day 3 prospect. You can't get to all of them, even at positions of need.
Yeah,
But this is just going to be for fun. This is not going to be for the podcast. You have me sold. I will say a couple of things. I don't mind players who change positions, right? Especially going from offense to defense or vice versa. Being labeled as raw. Of course they're raw, right? This is new to them. They're growing into this. What usually gives me confidence, though, that growth will continue and that development will continue is if the athletic tools are there. So the fact that he's not an outstanding athlete, I think also contributes in addition to the inexperience for him being projected, as you said, I think around like 4th, 5th round. But if you're the Patriots and let's say you feel like you really hit on your first 3-4 picks, right? Going through the first 3 rounds, then you can have a little bit of fun, and not in the sense of like F it, just take him, but in he'll have time to develop on defense. We'll find a role for him, perhaps on offense, because this is a team that's going to need to be bigger than the sum of its parts. And if you have one part that is unlike anything else in the league or what I've heard of recently, like there's something to be said. So I like that a lot. Anything else before we move on? Because I have a defensive tackle who's very much a defensive tackle, but not his tape is not as fun.
Yeah, no, those were pretty much my notes there.
Okay, cool. A lot of notes. It's too bad you didn't have enough numbers to share with us, because that would have been nice, but we'll just have to move on regardless. Can you feel it? Can you hear it? Can you see it? One of the best times in the sports calendar is coming up on the horizon. No, not Patriots OTAs, not minicamp, not training camp. I am talking about the NBA playoffs, baby, because look, as the Patriots have decided to sit out on their own accord the postseason the last 2 years, I've had the great honor and joy of going to Celtics games at a sold-out TD Garden crowd for the last 4 years for the Herald. And I'm going back, even if my work won't send me, because thanks to Gametime, I can get in with the lowest price guarantee to any NBA playoff game this year. And you should too, because let's say you find even a lower price elsewhere. Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference because of their lowest price guarantee. And when you go to Gametime, unlike other places, you find an all-in pricing right up front. No fees, no extra charges, no this, no that. Just here's the number. If you want the tickets, boom, they're all yours. And best yet, you can see the view from your seats before you even get there. So if you want to deliberate, whether it's the Celtics or the Knicks or the Lakers or the Bulls aren't going anywhere, whomever you want to go see, you can see what it's like in your seat and compare in real time, but only with Gametime. So take all the guesswork out of buying tickets for NBA games or NHL or concerts or shows by going to Gametime and using Gametime picks. Download the Gametime app today, create an account, use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account at Gametime and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. This is a guy who had a very good Senior Bowl. He's a small schools prospect. Patriots will continue to love the Senior Bowl as they did with Belichick, because Mike Vrabel, you look at his Titans drafts, littered with Senior Bowl standouts. Darius Alexander out of Toledo, 6'4", 305, early second-round pick. Some folks think he could slide into the third. If he does, it's because he just the tape at Toledo was good so long as you're not building a highlight reel, because the man never had more than 4 sacks in a single season. He did take a 30 visit to Foxborough, which is why, in addition to the Senior Bowl, where he dominated in practices, and then comes to Foxborough, and he plays a position in need where I think they're going to target on day 2, if not early day 3. It just makes too much sense. And he's a 3-down player, which you love and you want from a defensive tackle. You're taking that high. He's got super long arms. We talk about the violence and the play demeanor. Check. He's also heady. Like, some of my favorite plays from him, Dan, are when, there's a screen leaking out, and granted, Toledo's competition's not all world, and he's just there. He's like, I've diagnosed this immediately. You love to see that play recognition, where some of the guys we talked about, it's just 100 miles an hour down the tunnel. You can't U-turn, can't change, don't want to change your mind. Darius Alexander is flexible enough physically and mentally to be able to U-turn and make the play wherever he needs to. He will be 25, but I just think they look at this as a guy who we talked about before with Ty Robinson. I know what he looks like as a rookie. I know he can make an impact. And from there, he'll make a year 2 leap. And from there, ideally might be a starter in a couple of years. So I wouldn't be shocked if he's a pick at number 38. I'd be surprised where they are in the second round. But if he starts to slide in the late second, it's not a huge leap from 69 where they are at the start of the third to get into the high 50s or maybe 60 if he's still there.
Yeah, he was someone who I was toying with putting on this list, so it makes a lot of sense. He was also, a fun watch, a guy who can defend the run well. Looking 1.18 average yards gained per his rushing tackles. He was another guy who was able to get his hands up when he was rushing the passer with 3 passes defensed. He can get into the backfield quickly, which I do like a lot. So he is definitely one of those really fun guys. You look at what he was able to do. A 4.95 at 305. That's fun. So I think you can use that quickness to win both against the rush and the pass. And I think he is one of the more, well-rounded defensive tackles in this class. I think there are some guys who will give you a little bit more pass rush or a little more run defense. I think he is one of the few guys here who can definitely to give you enough of both. And I think that's why he's, talked about as a, second, third rounder. Obviously the small school, so the competition is there. But I think when you do look at his traits and what does project, I think he has the ability to make an impact on both against the run and the pass. Definitely one of the more fun and interesting guys to watch in this class.
Yeah. And I think too, he's a guy who was double teamed a lot at Toledo, because you're going to double team the guy who looks like he's ready to play in the NFL and was last year. So that can depress some of the natural sack totals that I just brought up, only 3.5 last year, 4 the year before. And when you get into an environment where you're no longer the guy who needs to be double teamed all the time, as a lot of small school guys will find, and it doesn't mean they're going to succeed, that's when you find out what they do in kind of more of a neutral environment. And so I think when the Patriots bring him in for the visit, you see him at the Senior Bowl where, it's all one-on-ones. Like it's not just the drills, but it's the 7s and the 11s. Like there's no game planning and sliding and all these different things. Like it's just go play. Let's see who wins. He won a whole lot, and I think that's going to matter to them. All right, we each have. Do you have one more?
So I think I actually have 2 more, but I can be quick with one. I did have Donovan Ezeiruaku, Boston College edge.
Mm-hmm.
Just in case he does slip out to the top of the second. I think he's just like we talked about, there are edge rushers in this class where some guys have production, some guys have the athleticism. I think he's one of the few that really does have both. He is quick off the line. He has a smaller frame at only 248, but he can still win with power. 19th percentile height, 11th percentile weight, but 70th percentile arm length and 85th percentile wingspan. So smaller guy, can use the arms, uses the arms well too. So, stand-up rusher can drop back a little bit. 34% target share or pressure share at Boston College, which was the highest among this draft class. So when we talk about guys who were really relied on to be creating pressure for, his team, that was him. 20.5 combined tackles for loss last year. He's got the bend, can use that often. Doesn't quite have, the power because he is a smaller guy, but uses, his arm length to create that advantage with, a chop or swim and stuff like that. And I think he's still growing there. His top cops were, Khalil Mack, Landry again, Nick Benito, some of these, smaller, quick pass rushers who I think are going to be able to make an impact. So I think, if he's there at the top of the second and they didn't go edge in the first round, I think that's a real fun fit. And I think of that, second-ish, third tier of pass rushers, Ezeiruaku has been my favorite one.
Ezeiruaku it's a great name. I feel ashamed running a New England Patriots podcast, not mentioning the BC kid down the road who's the best of the bunch. And they've got some offensive linemen, and we'll talk about them, have talked about them. They can make it fit. Kendall at center and Trebolo at offensive tackle, who probably is a swing guy at the next level. But yeah, if you're going to pull the trigger high up there, that's the guy you need to know. That was a very good breakdown, because you don't see this often, but like the arm length point is a good one. It's not only just that he has the long arms. You see him using a long arm technique and maximizing those traits. He gets into the chest of these tackles very, very quickly. And this is not just when they're rolling Florida State in week 1 and everyone's going, what the hell is going on in college football? Oh, welcome back to college football, where no one ever knows what the hell is going on, except for Ezeiruaku, who's going to be a really good player. My last one is a linebacker. I think the only linebacker on our list, because this is another guy who came for a 30 visit to Foxborough. He is 5'11", 221 pounds, which would have completely taken him off the board the last 25 years here in New England. But under Mike Vrabel, that works because as long as you play like a maniac and you trigger and you click and close and you are a tackling machine like Nick Martin is out of Oklahoma State, you're going to be on the board. And this is a guy who's 22 at 5'11", 221, ran a 4.53, and looks to be an early day 3 picks. You're talking 4th, 5th round. The tape last year was cut short by a knee injury, but you go to 2023, 140 tackles. So, yes, probably the statisticians at Oklahoma State are sipping on grandpa's cough medicine maybe at 11 or 12 as they're taking down all of the tackles that he made. But he also had 6 sacks. He had a forced fumble. The guy gets his hands on the ball. He was a team captain. Like, there's just all of the fits for a Mike Vrabel type of guy. Undersized, punches up. Like, he just fits here. Reminds me a lot of Malcolm Rodriguez, who Lions took. It was another that I really liked a couple of years ago coming out of Oklahoma State, undersized, but it was just like, he's not a fit New England. He's not a thumper. I think Nick Martin could work. They clearly do to some extent too. And it's just a matter of how much that injury is going to linger. But I just don't think this is where you would take a linebacker if they do. And I'm going to go with the guy that they brought in for a visit, and even just the tape. And then there's some play diagnosis stuff that's not great, and he's caught out of position. But like, look, when he's there and he gets there in a hurry, and you feel him in a way that you don't say that about a whole lot of true off-ball linebackers in this class.
Yeah, I mean, 8 tackles for loss in 5 games in 2024. That's a pretty good rate. You're running there. 20.2% of his run defense snaps ended in a tackle, which is insane. That's a very high rate. Still effective rushing the passer. So yeah, he is definitely, that is the type of profile you're looking for when you're going late at linebacker.
Yeah. Do you see anything with Malcolm Rodriguez, or am I just doing the short Oklahoma State linebacker thing? Because he was a 6th-round pick and then played better than expected, but it was a rare example of like, the Big 12 defender wasn't just feasting on being on the field for 80 snaps because like that's how they play in that conference. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, no, that it makes a lot of sense because I think when you look at the guys when you're looking at those type of guys, you want guys who are, making high level impacts. It's not just the tackles for him. It's, how he did it. Martin last year, just 5 games, 12 havoc plays. So that's a 3.4% rate on all his snaps just in 2024. That was the 3rd highest among linebackers in this class. So he's making impact plays near the line of scrimmage, behind the line of scrimmage. When you are looking at guys who are, having a whole lot of snaps and playing a weird offenses in the Big 12, that's the type of production you want to be looking at. And that's what he has.
Cool. All right. Send us off. Who's the last guy on your list?
All right, last guy is going to be Xavier Watts, safety from Notre Dame.
Like this.
Like 50th consensus big board. I think he went like 59th in Dame Brugger's last mock draft. 6 foot, 205 pounds, just a versatile safety, which I think is something of Vrabel defense usually likes to do. He's a guy who can play deep. He played a lot of split safety last year, but also in the box, in the slot, 19% slot, 15% box last year. He's not an incredible athlete in testing, but his play speed is so much faster than his measured speed just because of his instincts. He moves so well, just kind of knowing what that he needs to do, especially, coming downhill. I think he moves well in range from sideline to sideline and coming downhill. And he just gets to the ball, which is something that you really like for safeties. 27 pass breakups over the past 2 seasons. He was better in man coverage this past season. It was a little rough, earlier in his career, but only 3.5 yards per target and a 26% positive play rate allowed. That's from Sports Info Solutions in man last year. So you don't want him to be the guy, man on man against tight ends often, but he can hold up when you need to do it. Sometimes his aggressive instincts can have him like miss some tackles just because he's coming so fast downhill, but I'll live with that if it leads to all of the other production that he has. And I think that is the type of player he is. And I think you can rein that in a little bit, but even then, like, I think that's a fine knock to his game because I think there are so many more positives than negatives in the way he kind of aggressively plays some of the stuff that's in front of him.
That whole Notre Dame secondary is so good, man. Like Benjamin Morrison led off my again, that 8 corners preview where Darien Porter wasn't, but if I went to 10, probably would have made the list. It just, all of them are good in man. They're multiple. They fit all of the athletic benchmarks and prototypes. And Xavier Watts, like you mentioned, I mean, 27 pass breakups over 2 seasons is ridiculous. I don't care if the NFL goes to 18 games and it's over 36 games. Like that's outstanding, especially at safety. So the Patriots do need more of a free safety type who ideally could handle some more man-to-man responsibilities, because these are, front foot downhill players in Jabril Peppers and Kyle Duggar. And they re-signed Jalen Hawkins. And they've added Marcus Epps. So guys who still fit the similar profile, but it would surprise me if it would shock me if they took him. But if they added someone of a similar profile with the ball production and that play speed, no, it would not. Where probably later, but I do like it. And that's a name to know, because they're, when we talk about, it's not a great draft. Like, okay, that's true. But in the sense that you can identify quarterbacks and receivers at the top of the draft, and there are a lot of blue chip prospects. You go to day 2. Day 2 is going to be like a lot of day 2s of recent drafts where players like him are useful. They're going to come in and make an impact. Obviously, we just have to wait and see. But this is a good middle of the pack kind of draft. And he's part of the reason why.
Yeah, absolutely. And if he's, potentially sitting there at, 69, I think that is a place where you could go if he, does slip a little bit, because I think safeties might slip a little further just in this draft. But I think he is the type of player that I think would fit well in this defense. I think more so than some of the other safeties. And I think the value there would make a lot of sense.
Cool. All right, Dan. As always, listening or reading to you or following you made me smarter. I have so many numbers that are bouncing around in my head, and now I'm going to go watch a lot more Ole Miss film as I wait for this doctor's appointment. This was a pleasure, man. I wish you the best. You're going to be back on the pod. We would love to have you again anytime soon. Anything we should watch out for the draft? Anything just to follow? Obviously, drop all your socials, whatever you got.
Yeah, I do mostly Blue Sky going. I do a little bit of Twitter, but everything is at Dan Pizzuta. It's very easy when I think you are the only person named that. So I have exclusivity to that handle on basically anything. So if you're looking for any type of content where you might be looking for it, I'll be there.
Yeah, it's smart. It's numbers based. It's data driven. You're going to know the what, the how, and the why. One of my favorite follows. Again, like I said, we'll have you back. And yeah, I can't wait. It'll be a good time. See you, Dan.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for having me.
All right, it's been a while, but we have a first-time mail fan, John Limberakis, who is also making history, I think, as a mail fan who might be the most prepared, which, yes, is a challenge to Carlos and John. And who do we just have on here for like the 5th time? Oh, Gary. John is coming to talk to draft. I think, did you say you have your own big board when you reached out?
I do. Yeah, I'm about at 150 players so far.
Okay. Well, is that where it'll stay? Because I got to tell you, some teams' board, specifically the Patriots under Bill, never even got to 150.
Yeah, if I had to make their specific board, I'd trim it down too, but I get to about 200 prospects, and then I call it a year.
Cool. All right. Well, I don't want to waste any more time with the pleasantries. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you donating to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, which, again, if people want to be like John, be like Gary, Carlos, other people have come on, just donate. $5 or more, that gets you in. We'll talk about whatever you want. You, sir, as I said, are the most prepared because you sent me a rundown. This is normally me giving other folks homework. You have a list, so fire away. First topic, offensive tackles. You have a take that aligns with what I've been saying, but I want you to dive in. You're the one with the big board.
Yeah, so for offensive tackle, I think there are 5 guys in the top 50 who can be your starter there. My 2 pure left tackle prospects are Connerly and Simmons. For Connerly, if we're going to run a lot of zone or wide zone, he is perfect for us. We just have to sprinkle in some core strength, functional strength, a little bit more finish, and I think he could be the best tackle in this class. Simmons, he has some off-field concerns. Look, I'm just reporting this third hand, but you do hear about that. He's also coming off a significant injury. Had he played the full season, he's probably going top 15, top 10, and he's your best pure pass protector. So that's on the left side. So those are the 2 guys, pure left tackles. Then you have Membou and Campbell. Membou is a right tackle. He needs to improve his anchor. he was on an island less than the other tackles. And he would have to make the transition from the right side to the left side. Not everyone can do that. The team would have to know if he's capable or comfortable doing that. Membu, to me, is the best offensive lineman in the class. He can play any of the positions. You probably don't want to waste him at center. I think he can handle left tackle because he was so good when he was on an island at right tackle. He has the movement skills, the length, the ability to mirror pass rushers. That I think he would be the best left tackle in the class if he can make that switch. Campbell is the guy to me where I love Will Campbell, but the narrative around him just doesn't match the tape to me. First thing about Will is you'll notice he's over-aggressive in so many things that he does. He oversets. He drifts. And what that does is that lets the rusher get from the outside to the inside and straight to the quarterback, and you will see that happen in his tape a lot. Will is also often a two-hand striker. Cole Strange is also a two-hand striker, to give you some context. Two-hand striking is risky because if you lose, you're going to lose quickly. And he often does. When he gets beat pretty quickly. The other thing with him is he gets his hips too far up the arc, and that lets guys go from, again, outside to there's a nice inside lane right back to the quarterback. So for him, he has technique, a lot of technique issues at tackle that I'm not sure they're going to translate. For you folks at home, check out 4 games for Membu and Campbell. Texas A&M, Arkansas, South Carolina, Alabama. These are the 4 games where they're facing Membu and Campbell, NFL pass rushers. Campbell has a harder assignment, yes. But in those 4 games, Campbell let up 4 hits, 9 hurries, and had 3 penalties. Membu, in those same 4 games, let up 4 hurries and 2 penalties. Do the math. And then the last one is Ariante.
Let me stop you there because I think the Membu Campbell conversation is a lot of what people are talking about at number 4. And I think you make a lot of really good salient points because let's say I'm a big Will Campbell fan, right? I hear this. Oh, he's got technique issues. Patriots have 3 offensive line coaches. One's Doug Marrone. He was an offensive coordinator. He was a head coach. He can fix that. Why not? My response would be, and tell me if this would be yours as well, is why do you think Will Campbell's a little bit over-aggressive? And again, let's be clear. John and I, you agree that we like him a lot as a prospect. I think he's going to be a good NFL player. We're talking about the caliber of being worth a number 4 pick, projected left starter in the NFL. He's a little bit more aggressive for the same reason people have been knocking him generally as a prospect. It's that lack of length. If I can't wait for you to come to me, knowing that if I put my arm out, you're going to run into me first, I have to go get you. And when you talk about the 2-hand punching, which is another good point, which isn't, it's not every single set, right, that he's going, that's a little bit risk that he's involved with. And that's the risk that's involved with drafting him and projecting him at that spot, understanding that, yes, he was susceptible to those inside moves because of the oversetting, which stems from understanding who he is as a player who's a little bit shorter than most.
And I would add to that, I think there's some stiffness in his vertical pass sets. So he has to now cheat for 2 reasons, length, and he has some stiffness in his slide. The draft is about mitigating risk as much as it is maximizing value. And with Campbell, there is just so much risk for him as a left tackle. Again, I love him. If we had a hole at left guard and we wanted to draft him at 4 for that, I don't love the positional value, but I'd be on board more with that than drafting him as a left tackle.
Yeah. All right. Real quickly, your last offensive tackle, and then give me your quick rankings of who you would take if you're the Patriots at 4, or if none, just say none.
Yeah. So Ariante Aristide is my last guy. There's effort concerns. He plays up and down versus who he's playing. And he's a waist bender, and his hands and punch timing, there's just a lot you have to work on. But the athleticism and the size is there. For me, I would take Membu. Well, first, Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter.
Yes.
But then if I can't get them, I would try to trade back and get 2026 capital. If I can't do that, Membu. If I can't get Membu, then I'm going to go Walker or Graham. I love those 2 guys.
Yeah, cool. We're pretty much aligned, which generally makes for bad podcasts, but so far so good. When I said you were the most prepared, you've lived up to that here with the detail. I would also say, there's some little bit of, I don't want to say buzz because that suggests like rumors and things that are surfacing But smart people, Mike Tice, for example, former Vikings head coach, former offensive line coach, father of Nate Tice, who does outstanding work over Yahoo, says Josh Connolly is his number one tackle, period. And I see that even despite the, concerns about the lack of bulk and the power, which you think of a Vrabel player. He's got to be violent. He's got to be physical. He's got to be strong. And I don't think there are so many more limitations to him just having to be a zone tackle. But if you want him to be day one starter, set it and forget it type, yeah, you probably need to adjust the system. I think the team that drafts him should challenge Josh to not only add a little bit of weight, but a little nasty streak in his game, so that when they are involving, whether they're more dark concepts or counter, whatever you want to do with him, you can lead with your face and your hands and like your whole upper chest. Like that's what you want to see a little bit more out of him. Fair?
Yeah, I completely agree. He has the explosiveness to get into blockers and move them. So if you add some power to that explosiveness, now we're cooking with gas. Yeah, I'm with you. I really like Connerly.
Cool. All right. The next thing on your rundown, again, not mine, was draft strategy. So talk to me. We hit on it a little bit at 4. Yep. Are there players you like later in the draft that you would move up for? What's the big strategy here as you see a draft that we all know is big on running backs, tight ends, defensive line class, good corners in the middle rounds? Like what are you thinking if you're the Patriots?
Yeah, so if I'm the Patriots, I'm going to identify my offensive line process. I have to pay the suck tax. I need to maybe overdraft a little bit of offensive line. So I'm going to do that early. I know that I can get a good edge defender like, say, UCLA's. Let me just grab his name real quick. It's
tough.
Oluwafemi Aladejo. He is someone it's like 68, 77 you can take who'd be really good there. So I would say you can find running backs, defensive line, and edges, round 3 and later that are going to be potential starters for you. So take offensive line early, get defensive line help later, and running backs. You can build through the trenches on both sides if you're selective, careful, and as Vrabel would say, aggressive in the right way.
Yeah, not reckless, which I think is the point, right? Like there's always a line to be crossed in the case of be aggressive, which is everyone's favorite approach, right? Whether you're coaching defense, preparing for the draft, I don't know. Most places in life, ideally the road, at least where I live up here in Boston, aggressive but not reckless. You didn't mention receivers, which is curious to me. And I think, look, whether you have a big board like John, you're doing mocks like I am, a podcast, you're not going to hit on every single position. And if the Patriots think they're going to do that, they're probably fooling themselves because you just don't have a ton of picks on day 1 and day 2. What receivers do you like really quickly before we get to the Vrabel guys?
Yeah, sure. So receiver-wise, let me just get to my board, and I have them highlighted. What do you know? There are 5 guys I like for the Pats for receivers. All of these guys are kick butt blockers. We have Jaden Higgins. I love Jaden Higgins for them. I use the term slanker, slot flanker. So Jaden Higgins and Jack Becker, those guys. Elick or Elick, Ayomaner, 100% sure. Yeah, he's your X. A lot of development needed there. And then 2 guys that have really good run after catch and they're good blockers. Jalen Royals, Savion Williams, who, in my opinion, is the reincarnation of CP84. I love those guys. You can get them later on in the draft.
Yeah, I'm with you on Ayomaner, who I was texting Danny Kelly from The Ringer, who I think is going to come on here after the draft. This was like maximum slam time for him. I said, I thought I had a friend in Mike Giardi who then just completely dismissed my Elick Ayomaner love and called him feet for hands and all this different stuff. And I just wanted to emphasize, like, that Stanford passing game sucked. That is not an environment conducive. Like if you were trying to grow a plant, out of sod, or just somewhere in the desert, right? Like no matter how much you water it, it's just not going to work. That dude has traits that translate. That guy gets in a better environment. Someone who can get him the ball, and a receivers coach who can say, hey, like, we're just going to work with the jugs machine. And we'll put you in different positions and work on that. Anyway, Danny Kelly agreed with me. Suck it, Mike Giardi. And Torrey Horton, where are you on him? Because that's evolving now as one of my crushes who I think could fit. Would you call him a slanker?
Torrey Horton, yeah, I have him as a slanker and a gadget guy. I see him as kind of a round 4 or 5 person. I think he can be a decent wide receiver 3-4. He's actually one of the guys on my list where I'm like, you know what? He could actually upside wise have a wide receiver 2 upside. So yeah, I do like him. There's some risk with him. I have him round 4-ish.
Cool. All right, your Vrabel guys and favorites we haven't hit on yet before we get you out of here.
Yeah, so this one would make everyone mad if we took him in the top of the draft, but I think he unlocks our secondary. Jade Barryn reminds me a lot of Witherspoon as a player. I think he could be our free safety or a nickel. I love him. That's a surprise.
Are you talking Devin Witherspoon? The Seahawks went 5 a couple years ago?
Yes, correct.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
He reminds me a ton of Witherspoon. I love his read and react. I love how tough he is. And you want a single high, safety, he can do that. He reminds me a lot of Devin McCourty. I really like Barryn. Mason Taylor for tight ends. I think he could be a future plus starter. Defensive line wise, I think that Vrabel would love Walter Nolan. But the only question I have with him is, okay, there are some character concerns. So for him, there's that. Darius Alexander's another guy, I think, for interior defensive line. And then edgewise, Nick Scorton and JTT. I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name. And two last ones. Marcus Mbao, Purdue, offensive interior lineman, and day 3 late pick, Joshua Gray is your center of the future from Oregon State. So those are the guys I think Vrabel would in particular really enjoy or appreciate as players.
Cool. All right. We had a lot of center talk in the intro in the mailbag, but I did not mention your guy. So I'm glad we could continue to expand our center big board list. John, I appreciate all the research. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you, of course, donating to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. It sounds like we'll have you back. Do you ever follow? What do you do with the big board once the draft is done? Like, and is this in your house? Is it just on the computer? Do you tell the family to leave you alone for the weekend? Like, I'm very curious about what your next 8-9 days look like.
Yeah, my partner is very supportive. I will say that she is amazing. I keep the big board online. I have a Google spreadsheet that's open to anyone. I'm on Sons of Sam Horn, the Boston-based chat site, and I'm on Blue Sky at The Pick Is In. And I'm always happy to talk. If you want to be part of a Slack group that goes over draft prospects and has access to all 22, just let me know. I would be happy to hook you up.
Look at this. This guy, first time on this podcast. I don't know any other podcast that you may or may not have done, but you are plugging without being prompted. You are prepared, sir. You are to the point. John, this is an outstanding hit, and I thank you for your time and your donation.
Thank you very much. As a personal thing, my grandfather passed of lymphoma, so what you guys are doing is really amazing. We need charity more than ever. Thank you, guys.
Today we're taking a look at Georgia linebacker Jalon Walker, why he makes entirely too much sense as the first pick of the Mike Vrabel Patriots era, and where exactly he could be used best at the next level. Walker started 1 season for Georgia, taking on early linebacker duties after 2 years as a situational rusher. The Longhorns slide right on a play-action dropback, leaving Walker 1v1 against fellow 2025 prospect Cameron Williams. The tackle tries using a hug technique to grab Walker, but the edge rusher keeps himself clean by stabbing Williams' chest and controlling his outside wrist. This jolts Williams back and causes him to raise his pads, allowing Walker to win inside with an arm over and flush the quarterback, influencing a check down and eventual drop. I actually thought Walker's 2023 pass rush tape was even more impressive than what he showed last season, as there were a wider variety of moves and he had more opportunities to show off his lower half flexibility. Thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to become a member of Patriots Press Pass on YouTube to get full access to videos like this and much more really fun content. I cannot wait for you to see it.